All right, let's do this. Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing one of the videos that stresses me out the most, but it's a wrap-up video. I'm going to catch you up on all the books that I read in January and February. Initially, I wanted to do quarterly wrap-ups, but between January and February, I've just read a shocking amount of books to me. Like, I was not expecting that, and I don't think I can put them off any longer because some of them are already fuzzy, so I can't imagine waiting another month to film this. So we're just gonna film it early and we're gonna talk about all the books I've read so far. I was not the best at taking notes on these books as I was reading them. I wanted to be better about it, and I think my plan going forward is going to be to start a reading journal, which is something that I told myself I would never do because I was kind of nervous that it would feel like an additional step and then I just wouldn't do it. And we're just gonna see how it goes. And then hopefully once I get to these videos, it won't feel so daunting to put together all my notes and try to remember everything about these books. But okay, let's just dive in. Okay, so the very first book that I started off 2024 with is It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by Thorogood, and I read my copy through Hoopla, which has been so nice to be able to read graphic novels on my iPad and just get them from the library. I feel like I love reading graphic novels physically just because I like to hold the book and like see it, but also at the same time, I feel like graphic novels can be kind of like uncomfy to hold. On my iPad it's like super easy and it doesn't hurt my hands, so I really liked that. Basically what this is about is we're following Zoe for like 6 months of her life, and she's like going through it. She's having suicidal ideation, and she's also working through creating this graphic memoir, so it's like a meta-narrative graphic memoir. I don't know if I used the correct word there. I think that's what it's called, and I thought that was like so fascinating. As I was reading, I did take like some screenshots because I wanted to like share it with you all, and so you could see like some pages from the graphic novel. So I'll start like popping those over here. But I just loved her style so much, and I feel like it varied, and also the way that she like told the story. I feel like I never knew what was going to be coming next. Like I would like swipe to the next page and it was like a completely different art style, and I felt like she was so honest in her like telling of those 6 months and that period of her life and what she was going through and how she was feeling. Like it felt really honest as I was reading it, and she was really showing us all the sides of her during that time period. So I don't know, I really loved it, and the art style is so cool. I remember while I was reading it, I kept telling Jacob like, oh my god, you should read this because the art alone is just so beautiful. So yeah, I really loved this one. This one was a really good start to my year. So the next book that I actually listened to was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, and this is just Britney's memoir where she's telling us about her childhood and growing up and becoming a pop star, and she's telling us about what it was like for her to be like surrounded by paparazzi and the tabloids and how horrible that all was, as well as the conservatorship that she was under because of her parents. I honestly didn't think I was going to read this book. I loved Britney. Like growing up, she was one of like the main musicians that I like listened to. But to be honest, I feel like I didn't know too much about her. Like growing up, I don't think I really paid that close of attention. I feel like I saw some bits and pieces, but there was a lot that I just like had no idea was happening to her, which is like really horrible and really sad. I was just so happy that Britney had this chance to really tell her side of the story and talk about what happened to her. Like I can't like the whole conservatorship, like I honestly didn't have any clue what was going on until like all the Free Britney stuff, and even like at that point I don't think I fully understood like what exactly was going on. So this definitely gave insight into that, and just like so heartbreaking to read about. If you are an audiobook listener, I do highly recommend giving it a read on audio. Britney doesn't narrate it. She does narrate the like intro piece of it, and it was just nice to hear her in the beginning. I can totally see why she didn't want to read all of it. I can see why she didn't want to like relive it. I'm sure writing it alone was hard. This was really, really good, and I'm really glad I ended up picking it up. I feel for Britney, and I just hope that things just get better for her. So that was The Woman in Me. So glad that I read it. And up next is another book that I listened to the audio of, and it's Love, Pamela by Pamela Anderson. And you're probably like, two celebrity memoirs, back to back what's going on. And I don't typically read celebrity memoirs. I feel like I have here and there, but I actually ended up going to my library's book club. They have like a celebrity memoir book club, and one of my friends let me know about it, and we've been going together, and it was just really fun. So this was one of the picks for January. So I read that, and this was not on my radar whatsoever. I didn't even know that this book had been released. I also know nothing about Pamela, really. Like, I would just like know about Pamela Anderson, but I don't really know anything about like her backstory or her current story, really. Like, I have no insight into her whatsoever. So this was a really interesting read because I didn't have necessarily expectations besides like what has been shown to me in like in the media. So going into it, I was like, really? I don't know. Maybe not like thrown aback, but when I was listening to it, she does narrate it. She just felt so like whimsical and really thoughtful. I feel bad saying that like I wasn't really expecting that from her because like obviously the media portrays her in a certain light. But yeah, I was actually like really impressed with this one and her writing and how she read it. Because I listened to it on audio, I didn't realize that there's also like poetry within each of the chapters. So it's like she'll be talking, and then there's like a little poem. Going to the book club, I realized that, oh, okay, there were like sections that were poems that she wrote based off whatever we were talking about. And I thought that was really interesting. I honestly didn't really notice like when I was listening to the audiobook, so I can't say too much about how I felt about the poetry, I guess. I don't know, I just didn't necessarily feel like I was reading poetry, but it also didn't like throw me off. So I don't know. Overall, I did enjoy my time with it, and it was nice to be able to go to the book club and talk to people about it and like hear their thoughts. I wasn't sure if I was gonna love or hate it, and I feel like I fell right in the middle. Like, it was fine. Didn't like blow me away, but it was nice to kind of get to know Pamela a little bit more personally than like what I've just known from her and like the media. Okay, the next book that I read, let's see if I can do it justice because I don't know, it was really, really good. But it's We Could Have Been Friends, My Father and I by Raja Shehadeh. This is Raja's memoir where he's taking a look back at his father's life and everything that his father did for Palestine. His father was a lawyer and was an activist, and he was always like fighting for Palestinian rights as they were starting to be taken away, like things were happening, and he was trying to like defend and protect Palestinians. And it's interesting because Raja is an activist and lawyer himself too, so I feel like they're similar in that sense. And I'm sure like looking back, he was able to kind of look at it in a different lens now that he's older, because when this was written, I believe he was much older. He's kind of going back, taking a look at all the documents and really dissecting it and understanding like everything that his father did for Palestine and for their liberation. I feel like it's a different light than he saw when he was growing up. Now that he's older, now that he has like more experience as a lawyer and an activist, he can really see like the things that his father was dealing with at the time. I think this one took me by surprise a little bit because I wasn't expecting all the historical events that Raja was talking about. There's a lot of history that's being covered and a lot of like laws that were being passed that is being covered. So I feel like that threw me off for a second, but it makes sense that we are taking such a close look into history because it's like a huge part of Palestine and everything that's been happening and everything that has happened. And also like you kind of need that context to be able to hear more about his relationship with his father and what his father was like and what his father was kind of dealing with at that time. I thought it was really important to the story, and I feel like I saw like some reviews where people thought it felt like the writing was dry, and I do feel like it was like very matter of fact. Like, he's giving you all the facts, the dates, the information, but there was also like sprinklings of like reflection where he's like looking back at all of these events that took place and like reflecting on it, and I thought that that was like so beautiful. I feel like while I was reading it, I was enjoying it, but I feel like after I finished it, that's when I felt like the most, I feel like I needed to like sit with it once I finished to really understand like how much I really enjoyed this book. Because while I was reading it, I was like, I don't know if this is like a favorite necessarily, but I don't know, after I feel like it like stuck with me for a while. And that's definitely how I know that like a book is a favorite, or at least has left like an impact on me. So I really loved this memoir. I hope I did it justice. I hope I really like was able to form cohesive thoughts on it, but it was just really good and I do highly recommend it. The audiobook was also really good. I did a tandem read of it and the physical book, so both options work really well. And this is the same author that wrote Palestinian Walks and a bunch of other books, but I really want to read Palestinian Walks soon because I've just heard so many good things about it, and I think the concept of it just sounds so good. So that will be my next Raja book that I read. Okay, up next, I don't have the book because it was lent to me, but it's Are You Listening by Tillie Walden, and I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I finished it and then I totally forgot what it was about, but we are following two characters. Let me see what their names are. We're following B and Lou. Okay, we're following B and Lou, and B is kind of like running away, and B bumps into Lou, and Lou is like, let me give you a ride, like, where are you heading? I don't mind, I'll drop you off. And they kind of just like go on this adventure, and they're both like going through things. They're both dealing with, feels like, loneliness, and like they really need each other in this moment without realizing that they really need each other. I thought that was really, what was going on out there? So I really enjoyed my time with this overall. Like, the art was really beautiful and I really liked the storyline as it was happening. Totally forgot about it after, so not great, but I will definitely pick up more Tillie Walden. Okay, so the next book that I ended up reading was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, and this was translated from French. There's a bunch of women, I think like 40 or so, are being held underground, and they have no idea why. They have no idea how they got there. They have no idea if they're still on Earth. Like, they don't know where they are. And the main narrator is the youngest of all of the women, and she doesn't remember what life was outside of this underground imprisonment. So that's as much as I'll really say, but I really love this book. I did this as a buddy read with Ivana, and it was so fun to kind of go back and forth and talk about this one. It took me a second to like get into it, but once I was in it, like, I did not want to put this down. I wanted to pick it back up, and it's actually a book that has no chapters, which at first, like, if you would have told me that going into it, I would have been so nervous about it because I feel like I am a person who loves short chapters. So for there to be no chapters, like, I'm stressed. Why? I'm like committing to this book. That's how it feels. But somehow that just worked really well for this. It did not bother me whatsoever. I loved being in the main narrator's mindset. She was just like such a smart young woman. I don't actually know like her age. I just really loved her and like her relationship with the women and watching their relationships kind of form, because she does feel like an outsider because she doesn't know a lot of the things that the women are talking about, and she also doesn't understand a lot of the things that they're talking about. Oh, I feel like this quote is actually really good because it kind of talks a little bit about like her not being able to like relate to the other women. She says, "I have no idea what you mean by madness. You know I'm not like the rest of you. I haven't experienced the things you miss so badly, or if I ever did, I don't remember anything, and that hasn't done me any harm. To me, it feels as if I've always been alone, even among all of you, because I'm so different. I've never really understood you. I didn't know what you were talking about." I feel like that gives a really good insight into like how she was feeling imprisoned with all these other women. This one's been on my TBR for such a long time, so I'm glad that I finally ended up reading it, and I'm just so happy that I loved it too. I annotated this book a lot. There's like one bit that I won't say too much about, but it keeps happening. Like, the same thing keeps happening over and over, and it just felt so like heartbreaking every time it happened. I just really love this book. So yeah, that was I Who Have Never Known Men. Definitely a new favorite. Ooh, okay, so I'm going to talk about these two books together because they're part of a duology. So it's the Monk and the Robot duology, and basically we are following Dex, who wants to become a tea monk, but one day Dex is out a little bit past the city limits and they bump into Mosscap, who is a robot, and in this world they used to have robots that would work in factories, but one day they gained like consciousness and decided like, no more of this, like, we are out, and they left. So after that happened, this world kind of had to figure out what they were doing and reassess, and they kind of changed their ways. So once Dex bumps into Mosscap asks, "What do humans need?" And that question is a little bit more complicated than Mosscap realized. So Mosscap and Dex go on an adventure, and they go around to all the different cities in Panga and ask people, what do humans need? What do people need? This was just like so dang sweet. I buddy read this with Seki, and it was just so fun. Like the timing of it worked so perfectly. Moscap, I love so much. I think Moscap is really, really funny, and I love its insights and hearing Moscap's thought process. So yeah, I just really, really loved them. I love them together too, and I will definitely be going back to this. This feels like it could be like a comfort read when you're feeling like you need a little bit of hope in humanity and society. So I wish that this was the world we lived in so bad, but it was nice to have this as like a bit of an escape. I feel like I was able to pick this up. I feel like I was in this world, and it was just like exactly what I needed. So if you're looking for something like that where you really want to escape and go somewhere cozy and have a laugh and have some like really sweet moments, I highly recommend this series. Okay, the next book. I feel like I need to issue a formal apology because there was one video where I talked about this book and I was like, I think it was too hyped up, or like I didn't understand the hype, but I did want to reread it because I thought maybe it was me at the time, like maybe I needed to give it another chance, and I am so glad that I did because it's probably like a new favorite, and I'm so excited to read her other book now. It's Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen, and I just want to read the synopsis. I'm just going to read part of it because I feel like this is like a really good insight into like the book. Okay, so the synopsis is: Gilda, a 20-something atheist, animal-loving lesbian, cannot stop ruminating about death. Desperate for relief from her panicky mind and alienated from her repressive family, she responds to a flyer for free therapy at a local Catholic church and finds herself being greeted by Father Jeff, who assumes she's there for a job interview. Too embarrassed to correct him, Gilda is abruptly hired to replace the recently deceased receptionist, Grace. I feel like that's just the perfect summary for this book, and I related to Gilda big time. Like there was so many times where she was saying stuff or she was talking about something that was happening, and I was like, I've thought this before, like I've had these thoughts before, and I laughed out loud so many times. I truly don't understand what I didn't like about it the first time I gave it a read. I did listen to this on audio, so I don't know if that made a difference because I think last time I read it physically. This is another book that I could totally see being like a comfort read for me and like being one that I just go back to over and over again because it was just like so good, so funny, and Emily Austen just really did a great job like with this character and with this whole storyline. So there was one specific part of the book where she's like on like a Reddit forum or some kind of forum, and she was Googling stuff about priests, and she came across a forum saying that like priests are freaks because they don't want to pair up and procreate, and Gilda leaves a comment and she's saying that she's less confused by priests not being called to be husbands or fathers, and she's more confused about them being called to be anything at all. And then she like very quickly deletes her comment because someone responds in it saying, what the hell? I don't know if I'm like saying this out loud and it's not funny, but I thought that was so funny. Like I had to pause the audiobook and just like laugh. Emily Austen's humor, it's my humor. So formal apology. I am so sorry that I ever said that it wasn't worth the hype. It was a really good read. A little tea break. Okay, so up next, I have the physical book, but I actually listened to it fully on audio. It is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and we're basically following this woman, June, who is friends with Athena Liu, and they both went to Yale. They were both in the same graduating class, but Athena Liu has made it pretty big. Like, she's a very successful author, and June is still trying to, like, break through and make it. One day, they hang out, and Athena dies in a very, like, freak, weird accident. That made me laugh out loud when I read it, but that's also not a spoiler because it's part of the description. But yeah, she dies in a freak accident, and June found out through Athena that she had just finished writing a book, and so she steals it and she ends up publishing it under her own name. So does not give Athena any credit. It is not under Athena's name. It is fully under June's name. And so we kind of follow along and see what ends up happening. Listening to this on audio was so good. I could not put it down. I can totally see why people are like hooked when they read this one, because you're just following along and you're like, what the hell are you doing? You kind of just have to like follow her along, and it's stressful because some of the decisions that she makes and some of the things she does to keep this secret under wraps is like, oh, girl, what are you doing? What are you doing? But I thought this was so good. And honestly, after reading this, I really want to read Babel, which originally I didn't necessarily want to read it just because, I don't know, I felt a little bit intimidated by it. I don't really love dark academia books, so I don't know, I didn't think it would be for me. But after reading this, I'm like, I want to read everything that she writes, so I need to read that. I also need to read the Poppy War series. That's also on my list. But yeah, this was so good. I feel like the commentary on like the publishing industry was so interesting to like read about and hear. I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel about it, but she had me gripped, and I spent like 3 hours cleaning my bathroom. I didn't want to stop cleaning because I wanted to keep listening. So this was so good. If you are an audiobook listener, I highly recommend listening to it on audio. I have like the shortest amount of notes for this book because I literally barely remember anything from it, which is not great. So it's Big Magic, Creative Living, Beyond Fear by Elizabeth Gilbert. And this one I did a tandem like ebook and audiobook read. It's just like a self-help book with being more creative and different tips and things that Elizabeth has done in her life to help her be more of a creative person and live more creatively. When I started it, I really did enjoy it, and I was enjoying some of the concepts that she has in her book. One of them being that like ideas are kind of like floating all around you and they're just waiting for someone to grab them and do something with the idea, bring it to fruition. I really liked that idea. I feel like she talked a lot about like perfectionism and how like that kind of kills the art. I probably have something in Storygraph if I just looked. Okay. She says, because underneath that shiny veneer, perfectionism is nothing more than a deep existential angst that says again and again, I'm not enough and I will never be good enough. So I felt called out by that for sure. Also did this as a buddy read with Ivana, so it was nice to have someone to kind of like talk to about it as we went. I feel like it did give me some inspiration while I was listening to it and like reading it to be like, all right, like let's just try and fit in creative things like on the daily basis. But I don't know that anything really stuck out to me too much. I did feel like towards the end I was like ready for things to wrap up. It felt like it was dragging a little bit, but yeah, overall it was okay. Okay, up next, it's another graphic novel that I read through the Hoopla app, and it's Hellphone by Benji Nate. Basically the synopsis is we're following two characters. I don't really remember their names. I think it's like Nina and something. I will pop their name somewhere on the screen. We are following them, and one of the main characters goes outside and she hears a phone ringing, and she finds like this cell phone on a bush, and she picks it up, and it's like a voice on the other line that's just like telling her an address. And so she's like, okay, like let me bring you your phone, like this is clearly your phone and you're trying to get it back, like let me drop it off. So she goes with her friend, and then they find out that it's not the person who owns the phone, and that this phone is actually like haunted, or like there's something sinister about this phone. That's like the basic premise, and I love the art style of this. This was the first Benji Nate that I have ever read, but I definitely want to read more. The art style, beautiful. I love, right up my alley. But the one thing is that I think that this is part of a series, and I feel like when I finished it, I was left wanting more. So like nothing bad, like I really enjoyed it, but I wanted more, and I don't know like when the next one's going to be released. I at least didn't see anything about it. So if you read this and you know anything about that series, please let me know. I would love to know when that's coming out. I kind of wish maybe I didn't read it and that I had waited until like at least the second one was out, because I was left wanting more. But it was really good, and I will definitely be checking out more from Benji Nate. All right, so up next is, I do actually own this one. It's The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, and I did this as a buddy read with one of my friends, and this book takes place in Afghanistan in 1975, and we are following Amir and Hassan and their friendship, and we kind of see what their relationship and friendship is like, but they also are part of this like kite fighting contest, so we see them do that. And then something happens that kind of changes their friendship. Something else that happens is that Amir and his dad are forced to leave Afghanistan, move to the United States. So we follow them on that journey as well, and kind of seeing Amir grapple with what took place with his friend Hassan. That's the general overview. I buddy read this with my friend, and I loved that because I feel like we were able to really like dissect it a little bit more. And overall, I thought that this was alright. I feel like with this book, I really loved the story and like the storyline of it, but I don't think I loved the execution of it. So I don't know. I feel like if I would have read this maybe a few years back, maybe I would have loved it a little bit more, but something about the writing didn't really work for me. I also wonder if I would have loved this more if we got to get like a dual point of view where maybe we also got to see Hassan in his point of view, because I feel like sometimes it was really hard to read from Amir because he was kind of cruel to his friend. Like, he wasn't always the best friend to Hassan, so that was kind of hard to read. I don't know, I just loved Hassan as a character so much, and I wish we would have gotten maybe his perspective. Maybe that would have worked a little bit better for me. I kept going back and forth with this one because I appreciated like the story and what was being told, but I don't think I loved the writing that much. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh, but this one was just okay. I think I just went into it with like really, really high expectations. So maybe that was like on me going into it because I feel like I like hyped it up. I'm just glad that I finally read it because this one has been on my TBR for a while. I definitely want to read more from Khaled Hosseini. I'm very curious about his other books as well. So yeah, that was The Kite Runner. Okay, up next, I don't have the copy of it because I got a copy from my library, but it is Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huan, and we are following our main narrator, who is a talented young pianist. She was trained by both of her parents. Both of her parents fled from China to the US, and they were just like super, super talented and taught her everything that she knows. And they also were struggling with money because they were piano teachers and they didn't make that much money, but she did get like a scholarship or something, and she got to kind of practice her craft a little bit more. But something does happen where she no longer plays the piano. Then we jump to her working at a restaurant, I believe, and one day this lady comes in and she kind of like has an offer for her and tells her that she can go work at this company called Holistic, and it's this really like well-known, popular like health and wellness brand that's in New York City. And she takes that opportunity and things get a little bit weird. I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was so good. The writing was so good. I did not want to put this down. I feel like I flew through it, and normally I'm a very slow reader. I was like so zoned in, like stuff was happening around me and like you could not pull me out of this book. The writing of it, I don't know why, but it kept making me think of Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. So I feel like if you loved Ripe, I think you might also like Natural Beauty. It's a very different plot, but for some reason it just felt so similar in a way. Don't know if it was the writing or like some of the topics that were kind of being covered, but I don't know, I thought it was so good. It's, I think, a favorite for me for sure. And I also buddy read this with Ivana, and it was just so nice to have someone to be like, what the heck is going on? I sent her voice notes where I was like freaking out. There's parts where she's talking about her relationship with her parents. I thought that those parts were so beautiful and I loved it. She also had a roommate who was like such a weirdo character, but I want to read one of the quotes because I like laughed out loud to this. So her roommate is named Alice, and she's got an interesting job, but she says, Alice is trying to make it as a feng shui practitioner, specializing in exercising intergenerational trauma from furniture. I was just like laughing out loud when I read that because what is going on? There's a lot of like woo-woo Gwyneth Paltrow-y type things in this book, and it was just so funny to read and eerie and kind of disturbing. But I did also want to read another quote. She says, my relationship with music changed. Love became dependency. No matter how dark everything else might have seemed, the music in my mind was a glowing orb. It was my way out of language, out of the societal structures used by others to exclude me. No one could tell me from my music how much I did or didn't have, where I was from, or what I looked like. All I wanted to do for the rest of my life was to sit at the piano and urge wood and ivory to speak. That was beautiful. I don't know, I really loved that. Yeah, this is a new favorite. If you have been curious about it, and if you've read Ripe and you really enjoyed Ripe, I think that you'll really like this one. Okay, so we're at the final two, but up next is Survival of the Thickest by Michelle Buteau, and this was the pick for my library celebrity book club memoir, and it's a bunch of essays from Michelle talking about her life. And I listened to this one on audio fully, but I only really know Michelle from The Circle. Like, I know that she's the host and I think that she's hilarious on that, but when I was listening to her memoir, some of the humor like didn't really land for me, some of it definitely did. She talks about her surrogacy. Like there's a essay on that, and that was like really hard to read about, and I felt for her. It must have been like really hard for her to like have to write about that, or maybe it could have been a little bit healing for her as well. But I'm really thankful that she kind of like covered that, because surrogacy is something that I feel like I don't often read about or know too much about. So I don't know, I thought that that was really like insightful and showed us a lot about her as a person and how she went through that. But also she like sprinkles humor throughout the whole book. It's definitely not like my favorite celebrity memoir, but it kept me entertained and it was nice to kind of get to know her a little bit more. Okay, and then the next book that I read, the last book of February, is At the Bottom of the River by Jamaica Kincaid, and this was a buddy read with Ivana, and I have no idea what a lot of these short stories mean. My brain just could not grasp it, and it kind of was nice to know that Ivana also was like, I don't really know what's happening either, because I wasn't sure if it was like a me thing. But I could definitely tell from the writing, like she is such a talented writer. Yeah, I had no idea what a lot of these were talking about, but she can write. Like she writes beautifully. So this just made me excited to pick up Lucy and some of her other books. But yeah, this was my very first Kincaid, and I feel like no idea, but it was beautiful. Like there was definitely quotes that I still underlined and annotated. Let me read some quotes that I really, really loved. First one is, "But I swim in a shaft of light, upside down, and I can see myself clearly, through and through from every angle. Perhaps I stand on the brink of a great discovery, and perhaps after I have made my great discovery, I will be sent home in chains. Then again, perhaps my life is as predictable as an insect's, and I am in my pupa stage." I love that. But the other one is, "That woman over there, that large-bottomed woman, is important to me. It's for her that I save up my sixpences instead of spending for sweets. Is this a love like no other? And what pain have I caused her? And does she love me? My needs are great, I can see." That makes me like super excited to read some of the books that she's written where she talks about like a mother-daughter relationship. So if anything, this just got me hyped, and I'm just so excited to read more from her. Alright, so those are all the books. We've covered them. I hope I did a good job. If not, I'm sure Editing Cat will help me out. But thanks so much for being here, and I would love to hear what books you've read so far, or like what some of your favorite standout books have been from January and February. I would love to talk about it in the comments down below. I hope that you're doing well. I hope the start of your year has been good. I hope you're having a good time reading, and yeah, I will see you in my next video. Bye!